The 2019 NFL Draft is still a few months away. But that gives us plenty of time to familiarize ourselves with some of the players who will be taking part. It also gives us some names to watch during the NFL Scouting Combine, which is coming up February 26th to March 4th. One name to pay attention to might make no sense to some, but with the Saints you honestly never know. This is Parris Campbell, wide receiver, Ohio State University. The Saints are in an unenviable position for the 2019 NFL Draft. Thanks to trades involving Marcus Davenport gave up first-round pick Teddy Bridgewater, gave up third-round pick, and Eli Apple gave up fourth-round pick. The Saints have one draft pick in the draft's first 4 rounds. And that second-rounder is pick number 63 overall. For the purposes of these player profiles, we're looking around the internet at the draft big boards being put out by the larger networks and publications. For this one, we turn to the big board at CBS Sports. The opinions of the people putting together these big boards varies greatly. And rankings of individual players are constantly changing. Those numbers will change even more after everybody gets a closer look at the NFL Scouting Combine. Perhaps those numbers will change more dramatically for the player we're looking at today more than many other names. That's Ohio State wide receiver Parris Campbell. After taking Michael Thomas in the 2016 NFL Draft in the second round, would it be too much for them to do it again in the second round this year with Campbell? Maybe not. Parris Campbell currently sits as the number 68 slot on CBSSports.com's big board. After we see what he can do with the Combine, that number may jump or slump depending on what he does there. You see, Campbell has been boasting that he runs a sub 4.440 all last season. There's no denying he has legit speed. But there's also a video floating out there on the interwebs boasting that he can run at 4.26. If that pans out, you may see Campbell surge into the first round. Or at least out of the Saints' range. If not, or if it's over 4.4, his stock could well slump. Next, the case for Parris Campbell, WR, Ohio State page 2 COLUMBUSO, in November 24, Parris Campbell. Ohio State defeated Michigan 62-39. Photo by Jamie Sabow, Getty Images. The first question Saints fans have to be asking here is, wide receiver. Really? We have one pick in the first 4 rounds, we need a tight end, safety, offensive line depth, maybe even a defensive tackle or cornerback. Wide receiver. Well, that's another spot that some would argue needs addressing. Personally, I'm not one of those. I feel the Saints have all they need in Michael Thomas and in Keith Kirkwood and Tre'Quan Smith once they get better acclimated in the Saints offense and get better with the route tree. And the Saints did just spend a third-rounder on Tre'Quan Smith. Wouldn't picking Parris Campbell here be saying something about the faith the Saints have in the ability of Smith to develop? Maybe not. Being solid 4 receivers deep is an average goal every NFL team should have. It's debatable if the Saints are close. While I think Kirkwood and Smith will both do a lot more in 2019, that's not guaranteed. And we're still not sure how healthy Ted Ginn is, just that he'll be older. Frankly, there are receivers who took the field for the Saints, specifically Austin Carr and Tommy Lee Lewis, who shouldn't have been on the team. Neither is in any danger of becoming a starter at any point over the rest of their careers. It doesn't feel good to say that, but it's true. And the Saints need to have a better roster of receivers out there, not just Michael Thomas breaking records. If the Saints take Parris Campbell, imagine him across from Michael Thomas in that Brandon Cooks role with Smith and Kirkwood vying for time in the slot and in 4 wide sets. Especially if Campbell turns out to be a legitimate sub 4.3 guy. Next, Parris Campbell. The player page 3 COLUMBUSO, September 1st, Parris Campbell. Ohio State defeated Oregon State 77-31. Photo by Jamie Sabow, Getty Images. For all the talk of Drew Brees losing arm strength later in his career, I'll counter that by saying hogwash. Drew still throws a good deep ball but has run across a couple of issues over the past couple of years. One is that the offensive line, while performing better than most in the league, may be good at stopping sacks but not so good at stopping pressure. Brees has been rushing his throws at points this past season due to him feeling that pressure that inch again doesn't run the crispest routes. The kind of mind meld that Brees has with Michael Thomas is something he's never developed with Ginn. That just is what it is. Parris Campbell is a player who could seriously contend for Ginn's roster spot. There are publications out there looking more highly on Parris Campbell than where he sits on the CBSSports.com big board, and some who take a less convinced view. The Draft Network sees a lot of problems. There's a limited route tree for one. Limited to the point where it's just deep balls and gadget plays basically. A much faster and physically capable version of what the Saints already have in Tommy Lee Lewis. At 6 feet and 208 pounds, Campbell, on top of the rumored sub-4.3 speed, is said to have a 40-inch or better vertical. But there are knocks on just how good a pass catcher he is and how well he challenges defenders for passes. A lot of that sounds similar to knocks on Ted Ginn earlier in his career. But some of that has been cleaned up working with Saints receivers coach Curtis Johnson. Campbell's production at Ohio State really started as a junior and more than doubled for him as a senior last year. In the 2018 season, he had 90 catches for 1,063 yards and 12 touchdowns. Numbers like those will make any NFL team take notice. But most of those yards came on the use of the two routes, little slants and go routes. In the NFL, Parris Campbell would be challenged for catches more often. He'd be facing faster cornerbacks, and going across the middle in college isn't close to the same as it is in the NFL. Still, speed like Campbell showed at Ohio State, whether it ends up being 4.24 or 4.4, is still fast. A 40-inch vertical isn't as useful for the types of routes Campbell was tied to in college. But if his route tree expands, that could make him a major threat at the next level. And he could also prove useful as a return man on special teams. Next, Saints 2019 NFL Draft, how to use that second-round pick. Bottom line is, I wouldn't hate this pick. There are other needs I'd like to see addressed, specifically on the offensive line, which is why we put Oklahoma's guard tackle Bobby Evans at the number 63 spot in our first mock draft. Or at tight end, which is an ongoing concern. But, if he pans out in the NFL, Parris Campbell could also become a serious nightmare for teams already looking to deal with Michael Thomas.